unrehearsed program. The views expressed are those of the guests and not necessarily those of the producer. Today's topic.
Are female leaders perceived as mannish or incompetent in Passion for Truth?
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. Do reason, logic, and truth play a diminished role in the way America makes important decisions about male and female leaders? Do women leaders have to be nicer and warmer before they can be perceived as leaders? Let's talk to our experts, Dr. Joseph Annunziata, with expertise on international affairs. As a former professor, Dr. Annunziata was an advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Defense on international issues. He was also a senior staff member at the White House. Holly Jalani, political analyst, also chair of the Asian Task Force of the United Nations Association, National Capital Area. Con Singh Tillon, managing partner, Regent Company, also former senatorial aide. Dr. Sandra Bunn Livingstone, executive director, Christian Solidarity Worldwide, headquartered in Washington, D.C., and Fred Peterson, defense and counterterrorism advisor. As congressional fellow, Fred is also a senior fellow at the U.S. Freedom Foundation. Welcome you all. Starting with you, Fred, you think female leaders are generally perceived either as incompetent or too mannish?
I don't think so at all. I think most people, with some exception, most people will view a leader's, female or male, position on policy and competence in office and measure that before they will look at their sex. For instance, a case in point is someone not considered very touchy and feely, the Iron Lady of England, Margaret Thatcher, who acquitted herself quite well in that office, and the term Iron Lady was certainly not a female term at all, one would think, and yet it was not a term of opprobrium, it was a term of endearment and strength and power, and she followed in a tradition of many female leaders, such as in England in Elizabeth, or many female leaders around the world. It's the substance of her policy and the effectiveness of her in pursuing that policy, not her sex.
Sandra, do women have to be nice and warm before they can be perceived as good leaders?
I don't think so, but I think the evaluation that's made is probably a personal evaluation. So someone's going to take their own set of prejudices and approaches towards whether or not women should be leaders into how they evaluate people who want to be leaders or are leaders.
Kansing, where do you stand? Third world countries are accustomed to having female leaders, say like, for example, India chose Prime Minister Indira Gandhi female about 3 decades ago, and Britain had a female Prime Minister, Pakistan had Bhutto, but Americans are lagging far behind in their, they appear to be unaccustomed to see women with the same traits or similar traits as men do.
Well, there's no question that we're lagging behind in that regard, and there's other areas as well that need to be addressed. But in that regard, I think, there's a time and place for everything, and hopefully the current elections or the current state of elections that we have that's taking place, the current environment will afford the opportunity. I think it already has afforded the opportunity of a new way of looking at the future, especially in this country. It's open minds, it's open hearts, and it's opened a lot of ears, to be frank, and that's on both sides, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. You can't argue that fact.
Why do female leaders see their female leaders as conniving, ruthless, and not quite favorable? Is that a general perception, or is it just not?
Definitely not by this female. I have found too many male leaders to be conniving, manipulative, sneaky, and what have you. So I don't know where that's coming from. But I really do think when people apply that to women, male or female, I find it very misogynistic. I find it terrible. Now, what Fred said about what a woman ought to be was absolutely wonderful. The problem for me in America is that there's a dichotomy between what we say in theory and what we're ready to accept practically. In theory, all of us would espouse what Fred says. In practice, we want someone who is seen, not heard. And that's the biggest problem we've got.
Where do you come on?
Well, I would agree with the several comments that were made. The examples that were given of effective women leaders, Margaret Thatcher and Golda Meir, some people agree with a women leader if they like her politics. If you didn't like her conservative politics and she was a liberal, you'd probably say she was the worst disaster that the world has ever seen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Why is
you're
this surprising?
not making an objective judgment about
It's
the
quite objective. I'm
capabilities of
judging the
women.
policy, not the sex.
Yeah, I think this country has had 200 years, more than 200 years, of male presidents, male-dominated policies, and it is long past due that we allow more than 50% of the population of this country to have someone that represents them, both physically as well as emotionally and intellectually.
So, I would have to agree with Joe to some extent, but I'd also say that there's some data that proves all this. I mean, 3 out of the largest 4 electoral states already have senators who are women. I mean, so we've already...
So we're not talking about here of equal opportunity versus, we're talking about whether they are perceived as just competent with the same traits that
That's my
require...
exact point. If they're competent enough to be U.S. senators, one of only 100 of their kind on this planet, why are they not, competent to be, leaders of a democratic nation?
Wait. Here is the problem. And a female professor told me this in Germany many years ago. She had become head of the then English department in the Free University in Berlin, and she told me it's very interesting. As long as I was my male colleagues' equal, everyone accepted me. Now that I've become their boss, all of a sudden they hate my guts.
Yeah.
That's where the difference is. As a senator,
but our question was, are they ready? And the answer to that is yes. Now, what I would say to this person is Guten Tag Berzane and move along, and move on to the next subject, because the basic issue here is that there are qualified, women out there for these positions, and they should be given a fair opportunity. And I think the platform that we see out there today with Madam Clinton is a wonderful example. And now where it goes from here, who knows?
Okay, now let's
take a while to get here.
No question, and guess what? It's better late than never.
Sandra, Richard Nixon in his tapes always referred to the female Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, as the old witch. Whenever she came to do the negotiations, she was very competent, but he never treated her as a competent leader. He always, in his all tapes, he refers to her as the bitch. What did the bitch say yesterday?
Oh, God, the B word, not even the W word?
Yeah.
He was particularly foul-mouthed anyway about everyone. I mean, he probably called Kissinger that as well on occasion. But no, it's true. There are these leanings all over the place. I mean, I have faced it in the law field. I have faced it in academia. Cambridge University is a very male-dominated place, and I was the only woman, the only American, and the youngest person on the faculty there. And even amongst the male faculty members, they would joke about, we can't let these women take over. And it's a bit like you said, it's fine when you're a research fellow, but then you become a fellow and a lecturer, and you start moving up, and you have more responsibility. There is a concern. So there is a good old boys club that still exists in the corporate world, in the legal world, in the academic world, and in the political world, in the parties. I think more probably in this country in the Republican Party than the Democratic Party, for sure, because the supporters tend to be in the RNC more male than female. So, but there's a general societal move towards more women in leadership, but we have to overcome that.
It's rooted out in stereotypes, Fred?
I think stereotypes are one of the more natural things we as human beings do. And they arise out of perceived needs of people at a given place and time. But we are not